everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do a first impressions haul and overview of 6 candles from Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company. But before we dig into that, if you are new to Touch the Fire Twice, welcome. My mission here is to share my love and passion for fine home fragrance as an enthusiast, an educator, a reviewer, to inspire you to increase your own fragrance knowledge and understanding, ultimately enhancing the scent memories that you create. If you want to learn more about what I do, why I do it, how I do it, you can check out my website at touchthefiretwice.com. But for now, let's dig right into this haul and first impressions overview. So I purchased these 6 candles at Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company during their recent $10 off candle sale. Not the best sale. At this point, the $12.95 seems to be in the past. Maybe there'll be a $13.95 candle sale here and there, or a buy to get to. Both of those tend to be a bit better deals compared to the $10 off sale. I did use a 20% coupon, so that helped a little bit to bring them down to 13 something per candle. Not the best. I would have rather purchased these during their buy to get to and use the same coupon, but most of these scents were not available in my local stores during that sale, so had to wait. So let's dig in. There's a mixture of brand new, new to me, and 1 or 2 returning scents to go through. So first up, we'll just go to a returning fragrance, and that is the Easter candle that seems to now be 3rd, 4th year running coming back, and that is called Somebody Loves You. I don't know if they call it that every year, but it is their sweet carrot cake candle. The aesthetic is super cute, charming, springy, not really my style, but as far as cutesy goes and for, you know, the kind of home goods Easter aesthetic, this really fits the bill. And so there also is this nice sort of emblem or design on the candle lid of a rabbit sitting on some greenery, which is just a cute touch. And I do like that it is a wraparound label that has just a little bit of kind of like a translucency to it, so you can see into the wax. It's almost like you really are seeing into, say, you know, a field of wildflowers or into the garden. So as far as the process and materials, I think it's a nicely elevated design. Notes on this one for sweet carrot cake, sweet cream cheese frosting, fluffy carrot cake, and cinnamon spice. And of course, most folks have smelled this at this point, and it is perhaps a repackage of a failed test scent from many years ago that was called pumpkin carrot cake. I actually do have that in my vault. I'm not doing this as an in-depth sniff comparison review where I will kind of go in and sniff my candles side by side. I wanted to keep this one a little bit more lean and just give you my first impressions and use some scent memory, of course, to compare. But if I do any individualized in-depth sniff comparison reviews, I'll pull out some of those candles. I think that one was a bit weaker at the time when it came out in like 2013. It was a bit more kind of plasticky. This is quite authentic as far as a really nice, sweet, spicy bakery gourmand. It's soft, it's sweet, it's kind of, it's not just a generic, you know, cupcakey. It really is the spiced cake that a carrot cake is gonna be, because essentially it's, you know, a spiced snack cake with shredded carrots, sometimes raisins or walnuts in it. It's fairly straightforward, so it's not groundbreaking in that sense. And there's a sweetness that I suppose is from the tangy cream cheese frosting. I don't get a lot of that, but certainly some sort of sweetness, like a sugary bite. And they say cinnamon spice, but I mean, there's probably cinnamon and cloves and maybe a little bit of dried ginger in here as well. So it's your typical spice cake in that sense. It does lean, because of the spice factor in this, it almost feels a bit more autumnal, but knowing that it's carrot cake, it works. The idea of, you know, springtime carrots, bunnies, whatever. I like it. There aren't many bakeries out there right now with Bath & Body Works. Not that I'm heavy into them typically, but this is a nice, sweet, you know, this might replace another sort of early morning fragrance for me, or a Sunday morning fragrance where you just want something a little bit light and sweet with your coffee. This works. So I do like that, and it's a nice one to burn, you know, once a year at this point. Then we move over to, let's get into this collection here actually for their Black History Month for February collection, which was honoring or celebrating the fragrances created by Michael R. Carby, a perfumer that's created some of Bath & Body Works' most popular fragrances, thinking sun-drenched citrus, cactus blossom, beach weather, and of course one that is escaping me right now, but I will place that right here for you to see that one. And I actually was not super interested in the other 3 fragrances. They're ones that are just not my bag. They're almost too mass appeal, or they're always there, so I just don't gravitate towards them because like, it's okay, but I'm more interested in this the newer, different, something like that, or something that's returning that I love. They're perfectly acceptable fragrances. Obviously, they're very, very popular fragrances, so they work. The demographic with Bath & Body Works is keen on, like, it completely makes sense why they would bring those back. And it's interesting that one perfumer created all 4 of those fragrances. Beach Weather was one that is probably the newest of the 4 scents. It's come out once or twice. I never had purchased it in the past, but really, I purchased this for 2 reasons. One, sniffing it, I do think it is a nice scent. It's not the most groundbreaking or wildly different from many of the other beach summer fragrances that I have, but it is quite nice. And secondly, I really wanted to appreciate and celebrate with my pocketbook that Bath & Body Works is honoring Black History Month, and specifically a Black perfumer. I think that's a really unique way of celebrating the actual people behind the fragrances, which I'd love to see more kind of behind the curtains in that sense. And if we only get that through, you know, celebrating Black History Month or celebrating other diversity and groups, then that's better than nothing, to see it that way. And so I think it's great to celebrate a Black perfumer, which in an industry that I imagine is probably historically pushed very much toward, you know, Western Europeans. I'm sure there's a lot of issues with diversity, equity, and inclusion in the perfumer world. So really great to see a Black perfumer celebrated at Bath & Body Works. And I wanted to, again, kind of say, yes, do that and do more of that. So let me buy a candle in that collection. And so this one is Beach Weather. Nice aesthetic, just your gray matte glass, your traditional gold lid here. Very, very simple collection here with the signature of the perfumer. And the notes on Beach Weather: sun-dried sandalwood, island coconut, breezy palm trees, and crashing waves. And getting my nose on this, this is interesting because it's sort of like, in my mind, almost a combination of two, I'd say, typical Bath & Body Works angles when it comes to almost any of their body care and certainly their tropicals. And that is, there's a bit of a sweet fruitiness and a bit of a floral. But the fruitiness is more so, I almost want to say, you know, they don't have florals listed in here, which is kind of surprising, just the sandalwood, so a sweet, creamy wood. Maybe that's some of the sweetness. The island coconut certainly is gonna be some sweetness, but I'm thinking actually sweeter fruitiness, almost a fruity floral, like a nectar or perhaps a blossom of some kind. Crashing waves, all right, that's gonna be an ozonic, watery, aquatic note that could lean a little floral, could be a little bit dewy, could be like a minerality to it, which I think actually could be in here a bit. And the breezy palm trees, they're very much going for the conceptual aesthetic vibe of that versus, you know, I don't think it's necessarily palm leaves or the green from that, but it is kind of like the foliage of a beach or coastal area. And it leans, it's just on the edge of being almost like a fine fragrance, like a parfum. The tiniest bit earthy, slightly sharp, a little bit of an astringency to it, probably from the sort of aquatic edge. A bit of a powderiness from, again, I want to say some sort of aquatic floral, almost like a lotus or something, or even maybe like a neroli orange blossom. And the sandalwood just adds that soft, warm, sweet woodiness that's bright and blonde. Really a nicely done fragrance that I'm actually kind of surprised has not come out in the core signature collection as body wash and body cream and all that sort of thing that Bath & Body Works often does. But it is nice. I would say sort of inoffensively, somewhat, let's say, mainstream beachy or summer vibes versus, you know, a lot of the ones we look at like sea salt neroli, or back in the day, the, you know, seashore versus the suntan versus a beachside, kind of get a little bit more, I'd say, like niche or specific in the fragrance notes and the mood, the moment, the memory, the space, the place, the time that's it's evoking. Whereas this is a bit more, you know, any nice resort could kind of purchase this as the resort's fragrance. And so it's a bit of a wide net that it's casting. And I think it's something that most people would like, which again, that's Bath & Body Works. They want most people to like it so that most people will purchase it, right? So makes sense. I like it. Not an absolute must have typically, but I definitely wanted to support the celebration of Black History Month that they're doing there. So that is one of the big reasons why I purchased that one. Then moving on to a scent that I believe must be a returning fragrance, but of the past few years, I'm less of, you know, the aficionado on all of the scents of Bath & Body Works as maybe I was from the earlier Slatkin & Co days, like the 2009 through 2014 era of Bath & Body Works. So I think this one's probably been out before, but to my memory, I don't remember sniffing it before, and I certainly haven't purchased it. And that is Ebony Sands. This is another new collection, sort of their kind of nighttime tropical, so it's a little bit sophisticated, kind of, you know, a little bit more luxe with the metallic elements on here and a bit deeper, darker. There's that little elephant on there, and there's, I'd say, like complimentary accessories and candle holders in store in that kind of same shape as that little elephant. And this also has sort of a basket weave lid. The one thing I'll call out, and there's another one of these lids in this haul as well, that is not great about these gold lids, is typically the gold lids at Bath & Body Works, or when they do other lids, you know, chrome or silver, whatever, it's this gold lid from Beach Weather is the metal itself seems to be fully this color when they press it, right? So inside, outside is all the same. This lid, and one of the other collection's lids as well, is kind of a silver chrome on the inside that was pressed. It's a little bit hard to tell in the video, but very, very obvious difference in person, where it's the gold plating essentially on the outside. The issue with that is the gold plating is easily nicked, and in the other candle, actually more so than this, is kind of scratching off in places. And it's hard to see in here, especially because of this pattern, but there are places where it was scratched and now it just appears black because you're just seeing the back of this mirrored surface here. But this is gonna have to be something they correct, because if they're gonna go into plating the metal lids with different colors, you don't want them to scratch off. That's bad enough when it happens on candle vessels and glass, but these candles that are tossed around and stacked and scratched in the store will start to get kind of ugly even before you purchase them potentially. Notes on ebony sands, ebony wood, tobacco petals, and warm tonka. Now I'll say right from the jump, typically when they do any of these, let's say leaning masculine or leaning sort of that cologne-y vibe for the beach scents, where they're a little bit darker, they're more woody, think of I think black sands and the ones that lean more towards like your sage and cedar repackages from over the years, where it's some cedar wood, maybe a little lavender, sometimes some tonka, a dark wood or whatever, you know, insert adjective here, type of wood, not always specific, maybe mahogany, something like that. They just lean very like Axe body spray or just men's collection fragrances to me, and I'm not a big fan of that aspect of the beachier tropical collections. This one is a bit different from that for me, which is why I purchased it. And there's a really pretty kind of sweet depth to this. This feels elevated to me. It's a bit classy, almost old world. And what I really realized in smelling this is it reminds me a lot of a Homeworks candle, Haunted Woods, which I actually reviewed here in fall of 2022, that had deep woods in it. It had some plum, it had a bit of rose, and there may have been one other note in there that I can't recall off the top of my head, but it was sort of a sweet, dark wood with a little bit of a rich, succulent, deep, dried fruit potentially, and a dark, resinous almost flower. And this reminds me a lot of that candle. I'm thinking it may be, you know, the ebony wood. Okay, so a dark wood, the color of ebony. Tobacco petals. Typically you think of tobacco, it sometimes is the flower or sometimes the leaves. Of course, not tobacco like a cigarette. I think at this point we all know that tobacco, the actual plant itself, does not smell like cigarettes. But it does add a sort of warm, slightly woody, slightly resinous aspect to fragrances. And this one's saying it's the petals of the flower. It is, think of that sort of resinous, deep, sultry flower, the same way that rose appeared in the Homeworks Haunted Woods candle. And then warm tonka. So tonka is going to be that earthy, similar to, it almost leans musky, it's similar to your vanillas. It is that pod with those earthy, rich, deep, almost spicy, somewhat seductive, grounding aspects to the fragrance. And so put this together and it's like spicy, woods, sophisticated, a little bit of a floral to it. I've yet to burn this, and so I will see if it expresses itself the way that I'm getting it on this cold sniff, but it's really nice. A bit out of place almost for summer, but it is gonna be that dark, almost like jungle depth of night, humid sort of burn. And so it almost could be like the Haunted Woods candle, like a dark forest night. There's a bit of forest or jungle to this, but not a sweetness from any fruit. Not even really sweetness from the flower. I feel like there's something within the wood or maybe the floral that just adds like a really kind of a resinous, sappy sort of sweetness that I just think is really, really interesting, or almost like, you know, think of your frankincense and your benzoins and just those hardened resins from trees, right? So if you haven't sniffed it, do check it out because it is different than their sort of typical woodsy, spicy tropical fragrances. We've got 3 more. Next up from another tropical collection is Watermelon and Wild Mint. Again, I'm kind of okay with this aesthetic. It's nice. It's got this opaque, fully wraparound label that is white. You have sort of a Monstera leaf here that's pretty with all the different shades of green, that metallic accent to it. And then the lid is gold, sort of large open basket weave. The problem with this one, like I said with the Ebony Sands, where this was sort of the tight basket weave, and what you'll see more so in this one is because this is plated gold on the outside, You can kind of see there the angle, but you're just silver on the inside. There's a scratch here that you can see just along the edge that's just showing up as like a black scratch. And as you can see here, there are a few scratches as well, just from probably other candles sitting on top of it, and you can feel it, where it's a bummer to buy a candle that already is damaged. And so I think they need to correct that process so that it doesn't continue to happen in future seasons. For the notes of watermelon and wild mint, we have wild watermelon, spearmint leaves, and crisp cucumber. Now, what does wild really mean in there? The adjective is a bit of a strange one, and it's funny because the name of the candle is watermelon and wild mint. The notes are wild watermelon. So I don't know if they're both wild or if just one is wild and one is like cultivated or farmed. I don't know. It's wild caught watermelon. It's a little bit silly. I think, however, in sniffing it, they're probably going for something that is less of your watermelon lemonade or your watermelon candy and a bit more supposed to be authentic. So getting my nose on it. I wanted to like it more than I think I do. I was really hopeful that maybe it would be something similar to, they had a wild mint in a like squat black label in, I want to say 2017 or 2018. I did a review on it here way back before I relaunched Touch Fire Twice, and it was a true, authentic, somewhat earthy, but natural mint that smelled like you're rubbing the leaves. When you think of Nest's wild mint and eucalyptus candle, it truly seems like you are smelling a fresh, authentic bunch of mint where you can just feel the little trichomes on there, you rub it, and it smells so abundantly fresh. And so I was thinking wild might mean that here, not candied, right? There's something strange about it, and I can't really place it. Might have to burn it. The more I sniff it now, I may even just return it though, rather than burning it. I don't like to burn to see if I like it and then return it. If I burn a candle and the performance is terrible, I will return and exchange it. But if it's just a scent, I try to return it before I burn it so that it's resellable. So there is melon in here, watermelon, you know. It leans a little more candy. It's not super, super earthy or fresh. It's not your, you know, sour watermelon drop or whatever that candle was last summer. That was pure Jolly Rancher. And there's a cooling aspect, but the mint, I don't know, though it is pretty strong in the fact that it is a cooling sort of whoosh, I don't know that I would specifically have picked out mint, because when you sniff this, it doesn't say, oh, this is mint. The way that when you smell, again, that Nest wild mint candle, it is very obviously mint. When you have smelled other Bath & Body Works candles over the years that are mint focused, you know, I mean, Twisted Peppermint, all the holiday peppermints, you know mint when you sniff it. And spearmint, which is usually a sweeter, softer mint. So it's in there, but it's kind of in the background, a little, almost borderline, kind of toothpastey spearmint. Not quite candy, not quite toothpaste, but a little aspect of that. And then finally, what is the last part? The crisp cucumber. I do like cucumber being in fragrances because cucumber is super watery and it's kind of tannic and bitter depending. It is that really green, dewy, aquatic fresh, but no real hint of sweetness to it. And I suppose it's in here, but for me, I like the idea of all three of these notes, but there's just something in the blend that is kind of misbalanced for me. And there's one or two more things in here that I have to really spend more time on that I don't want to take today to do. There's something else in here, I'm not sure what it is, but there's a bit of a powdery aspect to this as well that I don't appreciate in this. I would want it to be cool, sweet, crisp. I mean, watermelon, cucumber, mint, all three are refreshing, sweet, watery plants. And there's just some other stuff going on in here that's leans a little bit more conceptual, almost borderline like perfume or body fragrance versus an authentic interpretation of a plant botanical sort of thing. So not loving that one. Then moving on to our final two here. This is from the Spring 2 Neutrals collection, which they're just going all out with the Neutrals collection. And as I said in my other recent haul, I'm kind of fine with that because there's some interesting fragrances that they can toss in here that makes sense. And it's kind of now just like a Neutrals ingredients collection, sort of a combination of the ingredients and neutral collections from 2022. First up, we'll go to Rose and Lychee. So you just have this same matte, the tiniest hint of like a warm beige, almost pinkish to this, with your creamy sort of pinkish lilac label here. Notes for Rose and Lychee are wild rose, sugared lychee, and delicate raspberries. So I almost wish that they didn't throw in the raspberries because the lychee already is sweet and juicy and succulent enough that it really didn't need the additional sweetness of a berry, especially raspberry, which I guess balances because it's a bit of a, to me, a tartar berry than say, you know, a strawberry or certainly blueberry. This is not entirely what I expected. First, I will say there's something with this lid that is very like chemically or medicinal. I don't think it is the condensed version of this fragrance, because sometimes when you're smelling, you know, a candle, you'll like realize, oh, the gasket here almost kind of captures some of the fragrance essence, and you'll get a stronger expression of the fragrance than just sniffing the wax cold. So that's why often, you know, when we're reviewing, or I'm sure in the store, when you're smelling, you kind of get your nose just in like that, just on the edge, rather than just, you're not gonna get nearly as much as when you kind of hold it all here, right? And so either it's just capturing it in a weird way and it's a weird blend of fragrance oils, or there's something weird with the lid that is almost a bit like melting plastic kind of scent. So I'm trying to do it without this, but the rose is certainly there. It's not a particularly fresh rose. It's almost like a dried rose buds or dried rose petals that you would use maybe if you were making something, like if you're making, you know, any sort of rose-based baked good items. Maybe you'd use sort of rose essence or rose water, but sometimes also more decoratively the dried rose petals. It's more of like a dried rose to me than a really fresh rose water or the flower scent that you're used to in fragrance. Well, the scent of the flower itself, period. And so I'm trying to think, honestly, nose blind, you know, thinking if we were just given this candle like this and say, what do you think you smell in it? Which would be kind of fun to try sometime, right? I think I would pick out rose, but it's less obvious than any rose candle that's, you know, Bath & Body Works rose candle that I've ever smelled before. And the lychee, so I do like lychees. If you're not familiar with them, they're typically found in Asia, and they have this kind of knobbly, hairy, weird shell on them that you peel off, and inside is this really soft, kind of supple, kind of like the texture of the inside of a grape, and almost the flavor as well, like a bit musky, really intense sweet. There's a ton of Asian candies. I know in Japan there's a lot of candies that are lychee flavored. Really fun, you know, kind of musky, like Moscato wine. If you like Moscato wine, it's a very similar, I'd say, flavor profile to that kind of like intensely sweet, musky grape. Is very similar to lychee, but lychee also maybe has some floral essence to it as well. And quite honestly, that's not represented very well here either. It's a bit more like Welch's white grape juice you might have had as a juice box as a kid. Not as sugary sweet, but it's more of just like a white grape juice concentrate that I'm getting here, because lychee, actually Emmy Essentials, which I did a review last summer on Emmy Essentials, sort of their top 10 core fragrances. It's a small business candle company that creates Asian inspired scents. And I have loved most of what I've tried from them. I actually need to get into some more of their fragrances because I've burned through some of the little tins that I did in my review, but they have a lychee that smells like you just ripped into a fresh lychee. So I know that it's certainly possible in fragrance to duplicate the scent of the lychee fruit. And in here, they don't really get it. It's like adjacent to it, but a cheaper interpretation of it. The raspberries, I almost get some of the tart bitterness of like the raspberry seeds. So all told, this lid is just really throwing me off. For me, the jury, my personal jury in my head, is out until I burn this one. And I am gonna burn it because I do like rose and fruit, or fruit and florals mixed. I often do enjoy, and I've really gotten more into them, I'd say, over the past year or two. So I hope that it turns out nice, but this could have been much more authentically rose or rose water and much more authentically lychee than it is for a fragrance that is called rose and lychee. So we'll see how that one goes. And the final one here is vanilla and musk, which of course, if you watch the Candles channel with Kent, which if you don't, you certainly should, great reviewer, you will know that this is a repackage renaming of Marshmallow Musk from way back in 2018. Now, I think I remember smelling it back then. I wasn't that into it. I didn't purchase it. It just wasn't kind of where my nose was at the time in 2018. I'm happy to say that now, as I've sort of gone deeper into my fragrance journey and really understanding what musks are and how they're used in truly building a fine fragrance, I'm more, I'd say, open to them and sort of the sophistication that they can bring, versus in the past, it was just like, oh, that means it's perfumey. Not the case, sometimes, but typically not the case. So I was excited to see them coming back, especially as much as he had raved about it. And so notes on vanilla and musk: whipped vanilla, soft cedarwood, and suede musk. And sniffing this, it's really nice. Now it does lean somewhat towards like a Bath & Body Works signature collection body care, but it's not for a candle that has musk in the name and suede musk, which is gonna be that sort of skin touched musk. It really is not overwhelming. There's no real like amber. Sometimes you get amber and musk and maybe some woods in there, and it's just too much. It's too heavy a bit where it just makes you go like this, and you feel like you're walking through the department store and they're just like spraying you, and it's just like, oh, get me out of here, right? That's not what this musk is at all. It's a really soft, sort of supple musk. a significant sweetness. I'm assuming from the whipped vanilla. Obviously, this is a kind of a true fine fragrance, so they give us 3 notes. There are probably 7 to 10 actual notes in here, and I'd love to be able to dig into their archives or the back end where they would tell us kind of what all those notes are, but they're just marketing what they think will make it sell best. The whipped vanilla, it is a somewhat sweet vanilla, not really, certainly not a bakery, not a foodie, kind of gourmand, because remember, fine fragrance gourmand does not necessarily mean edible or specifically, you know, foodie bakery. That's kind of a niche category, a subcategory of gourmand. The cedarwood, I don't get so much of the cedarwood. They say soft cedarwood. I guess, you know, maybe that means a small amount of the cedarwood. I do love sort of a resinous, slightly balsamic, dark, deep cedarwood that adds almost a bit of like a camphoraceous edge to it. And there is a little bit of sharpness to this, but I don't know if it's from the musk, the suede musk, or that cedarwood. So it's this cool, sharp, soft, sharp and soft. Honestly, if you've watched my reviews for a while, you'll know some of my favorite fragrances are the push and the pull between hot and cold and soft and sharp and fresh and warm, and just polar opposites put together that really create a balanced fragrance profile. And that's sort of what this does. There is this sharpness to it that I'm thinking is probably from the suede musk and that cedarwood. And the vanilla is round, a bit powdery, a soft, dried vanilla. And I said this before as well, actually in one of Kent's lives, when he did an Instagram live on the Candle channel, and he was talking about this, is I imagined, and I think now in smelling it, that there's probably also some of the powderiness. I do think this could be a bit of heliotrope flower, which brings a warm, round, powdery, not quite candy-like, but think cloud-like, a puffy, warm, round sweetness to a fragrance that can lean a little bit vanilla or almost caramel, or sometimes like a cherry almond. That's not here, but it is that powdery, warm, fluffy cloud kind of feeling to the fragrance note. A bit clean, I would say as well, actually. Like there's something in here where I almost feel like this is kind of like I wanna say like a bath fragrance. Like this is a calming bath, or almost, you know, it reminds me of like some of the bath bombs from Lush that have lots of different musks and things in them. I don't think that's why I'm thinking that this is bathroom scent, but it's hard to, you know, the scent memories kind of overlap and really influence not just if you like something, but what it smells like to you. And so this does feel, I wouldn't say soapy, but there is a bathing aspect to it almost to me. But warm, rich, round, not overwhelming, which is nice. It's one of those where I'm not sure the best time to burn it. For me, like, is this like a cool night? Is this a warm afternoon? I don't really know, but it's nice, and I'm gonna definitely give it a shot. And it could be sort of one of those surprise hits. So I'm excited to dig into this one and see, because it does feel elevated. It does feel like there's a lot of thought behind the build in the jar. So excited to give that one a try again. I'm telling you, Bath & Body Works sometimes will surprise us and really does bring in that heightened perfumer's built fragrance that this one really seems to be up there with some of those that are kind of leaning into that sort of fine fragrance, luxury fine fragrance territory. So love to see them kind of bridging those gaps. So that is it for today. Let me know what you think of these candles, any that are out now that I didn't purchase that you think are great, that you tell the rest of us why we should give it a shot. I would love to hear your thoughts on these, of course, as well. And until next time, take care.